the recording. So welcome everybody. This is our first attempt at hybrid study, which means that we're trying to both study in person and on Zoom, and we'll see how this all works. We're still working at it. We'll try it a few times, and if it's a struggle, maybe we'll go back to Zoom. It would be nice to be able to do in person. And so if you would like to try in person, next week is a time to try it. Come, show, and we'll have cookies next week too. And
where are you in the temple exactly?
We're in the chapel. We're in the chapel.
Okay.
Yes, we're in the chapel.
Just ring the bell and you'll get in.
We'll let you in.
May I ask a question? Good morning. You said you were sending out materials. Is that should be in the email? Because I didn't see it, and
I just sent it out to all of your emails, and when I saw
Really?
it was there, I just sent it to you.
Huh.
You should have received it by now.
Yeah, we just got it.
We'll look.
What chapter are we doing in Exodus today?
We're we're not going to look at the material for a little while anyway. We're chapter 6.
Okay.
We're going to first do a little bit of reading. We're going to do a little bit of going through it together. We're on page 351 in the Chumashim, which is chapter 6, verse 2. Chapter 6, verse 2 of Exodus.
I have it. Here you go.
So to give Diane a little bit of a heads up of where we are, because I think everybody else was here last time. What we spent a lot of time talking about last time was, in the middle of Exodus, why did God wait all those hundreds of years before God came and helped the slaves? What was that about? And we looked at the burning bush and talked about the burning bush and why did this happen at this moment in Moses' life, and who was Moses, and how was this a special experience? And we talked about, well, what would it be like if you were walking down Oak Park Ave and God suddenly spoke out of a bush, next to Scoville Park, and said to you, go speak at the corner of Lake and Oak Park and let people know about all their sins. So now Moses has come to Pharaoh in this portion already once, and Pharaoh said, well, I don't know who this God is. I'm not going to let his people go. And God embittered the lives of the Israelites and have them build bricks themselves. And now Moses despaired at least once and said, how am I going to do this? I tried this and Pharaoh didn't listen. And so now God is appearing to Moses. And this is supposed to be considered to be a very important and powerful moment. So we're at the beginning of the Parsha Vaera. And even though we're in this new hybrid model, I guess Alan will still have you read the beginning of Vaera, which is chapter 6, verse 2 of Exodus.
Okay. And just, I'm going to have to leave early. So if I drop off, it's not out of lack of interest, it's just out of lack of time.
Oh, it says next chapter.
Okay, Vaera. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Adonai. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. I have now heard the moaning of the Israelites because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the Israelite people, I am the Lord. I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. And I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I, the Lord, am your God, who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you for a possession, I, the Lord. But when Moses told this to the Israelites, they would not listen to Moses, their spirits crushed by cruel bondage. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Go and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites depart from his land. But Moses appealed to the Lord, saying, The Israelites would not listen to me. How then should Pharaoh heed me, a man of impeded speech? So the Lord spoke to both Moses and Aaron in regard to the Israelites and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, instructing them to deliver the Israelites from the land of Egypt.
Okay, thank you. Then we go into a whole genealogy and a list of the generations that were down in Egypt. And we'll maybe read a little bit after that too. But this is like a moment, God appears to Moses. Why didn't the people listen to this message from God? I'm going to deliver you.
Why did they?
Why did they not? Why it says, but when Moses told this to the Israelites, they would not listen to Moses. To God doesn't come down and save
So
them.
what kind of a relationship did he have with the people?
Yeah, they don't know Adonai. They don't know him.
I mean, if I'm walking down Oak Park Avenue and I hear God talking to me and I try and tell somebody on the street, they're just gonna think I'm nuts. They're not gonna listen. Maybe they thought he was faking.
Okay.
If they
How,
hadn't,
how did God report this to the children of Israel? Did he say the words, I am the Lord? Did he
Says
say as if
Moses.
he's talking about himself? Or did he say something told me that they are the Lord? Because the I am the Lord, I think, is really a big key here, especially if you're pursuing this connection between you and the divinity through a sort of subjective interest, through a subjective tunnel, so to speak. So, you know, why is he repeating, I am the Lord? What's the story about the I am here? Why is it such, and think of how Moses would report this. He says, you know, I met a guy on the street, on the corner, and he said to me, he was the Lord. That's not, would he have reported it like that? Or would he have come to the children of Israel and said, I am the Lord? In some sense, saying that he and the Lord both share this experience of I am.
So interesting. I mean, we don't know exactly how Moses told them. We would hope, right? The prophets, when they speak to the books of prophets, they often say, you know, this is the word of God. I am the Lord, you know, and then they try and repeat verbatim God's word because it's more powerful that way, right? If you said, he said, and he said this, and he said this, it gets lost. But the prophet is supposed to be a mouthpiece for God, right? The prophet is supposed to channel some of God's power too, right? It's not, you know, if I go and say, I am the Lord, they're going to say, well, if I say God says I am the Lord, they're going to say,
Yeah,
if you're a prophet, you speak with God's power. You would think it would thunder, right? You would have this vision, it would thunder throughout, you know, some of the power of God would carry with the words, right? That you would hear it and you would be moved, you know, not because they're a good Shakespearean actor, but because they're a prophet, they're God's prophet.
when I worked in patient psych, a lot of my patients told me that they were God.
Did they?
Or
Okay,
Jesus,
there you
right,
go.
yeah,
Yeah,
so-
so it's, well, in general, we believe people are not based on an intuitive sense a little bit, right? That's just the way we believe people. But there is something about this, I am the Lord, because God says, I had not appeared to them previously as the Lord, or as, they didn't say the Lord, they said, and they didn't say Adonai either. They pronounced this Yud He Vav He, right? they pronounced Yud He Vav He, which we don't know how to pronounce. Yeah. And we'll get to that because that's in some way the essence of this whole bit. But anybody else want to talk about why they would or would not believe Moses or God? Go ahead, Nancy.
They don't know who this Adonai is. They don't know who El Shaddai is. The whole thing, even with the genealogy, in the last Parsha too, was about establishing identities, right? Because until you know who you are, you can't do anything. You can't plot a way forward. So last Parsha was about Moses's identity. Who was Moses? Was he an Israelite? Was he an Egyptian? Was he a Jew? Whatever, right? And this is the Lord. This is the divinity establishing himself or themself, right? Let's not assign a gender to the divinity, right? And that's why it starts out, God spoke to Moses, I am Adonai. So that now establishes who the Lord of the Israelites is. And this entire Parsha explores that identity. The whole thing with the genealogy is to establish Moses as a Levite and to establish Aaron's family as a Levite so that the Levites can then go ahead through the rest of this text, through the rest, into the settlement of the promised land, where they were just sojourners before, right? This is now, you all need to get behind me because I am the Lord. I'm going to free you and I'm going to take you to, hold on, I got to get rid of this. And I'm going to take you to the land that I promised you, not to be sojourners, but to settle in it permanently so that it can be your possession. This is about establishing identities, I feel. And the divinity is stepping up right here and saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do for all of you all. And let's start getting behind this.
So, very nice. Go ahead.
They've been living in slavery for generations. We don't really know how much they knew about who they were, what they believed, who they believed in. They just knew they were slaves and they owed their lives to their slave masters, to the Pharaoh. And now you have somebody coming out of nowhere and saying, I'm here representing God. And they go, who's God? And they need to develop a belief to be able to develop a trust to move forward. But right now, the only one they can really trust is what's happening to their daily lives under Pharaoh.
So very, very nice. I mean, Moses does have a good story, right? Because he can tell the story. He could tell them, "Look, I'm one of you, but I grew up in the palace." I mean, that's a good story, right? He's got some, and then I was in the desert, and who knows? He's got a good story. And before this parsha, he came and he showed them the signs, right? The sign is the burning bush, right? He put his hand in his chest, and it came out leprous, and he had like a few miracles to show them. So they believed him at first, and they said, "Wow, Moses, maybe you are the one." And then he went to Pharaoh and he said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "No," and he made their lives worse. And then they said, "Oh, this Moses, he's not who he's claiming to be." But there is a process that needs to be going through. But I like there is this process of coming to know who God is. If the identity of Moses feels more sure about his identity, though he's also now wondering about God, because, okay, God, you said you could take them out, but you haven't done this yet. But there is, and I want to point out that where the Parsha begins was decided. Somebody decided this is where the Parsha begins, because it could have began earlier or later, but somebody decided to begin the Parsha at this moment because they felt this is an important moment. As we're saying, of God revealing who he was and who he wasn't. So I want to ask Nancy, because you made this point originally, or everybody. Okay, so who is God then? If God is saying these words, how would you describe this God? What is he saying is his main feature of what he does?
He is who he is, right? I am who I am.
Right, I am what I
God
am.
is always described. God is always described, and in fact, can be approached through the notion of self-reference. Now, self-reference is a big deal in logic, and self-reference is a big deal in this too. When God says, "I am that I am," he in some sense is looping his I into himself. So his I and himself are the same thing. Now you can fiddle with yourself internally, so you begin to get into that. And if you do that, you end up feeling an infinity. Whether you call that God or not, who knows? But if you work on this self-reference thing internally on yourself, you will feel a sort of a notion of infinity.
So I
Like that, yeah.
there's two points to this. One is the first
So
thing
like
you said.
this,
I
or
get
like
it.
this.
I get it.
That's right, it works either way.
So that it works. There is this idea of, he says, I am. We say Adonai, but he's not saying Adonai. He's saying I am Yud He Vav He, which we don't know how to pronounce. He doesn't say I am that I am. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying I am Yud He Vav He, and this is from the verb being. So it's kind of saying I am being. Maybe I am the ground of all being. I am that which is. And we don't know how to really translate. We don't know what it is. I am being. So there is something of what you're saying. And that would certainly create a meditative moment, a meditative challenge, perhaps. If God says, "I am being," so you say, "What is being? What does it mean just to be? What does it mean to just be? I am what I am, or what is that?"
Well, he's not saying I am a being.
He's not
He's
saying I am being,
which is above all.
or yeah, exactly. I'm the ground of being, or I am the source of being, or I am being, which is really powerful name for divinity, right? And it's not a name, it's a verb, right? So a lot of Jewish people have talked about that. But he does then continue to and say, he doesn't just say I am being and meditate on that. He says I am being, and then he says I am the God of I am the being, or I am being, or I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I did not make myself known to them as being, right? They did not know that. They thought my name was El Shaddai, which means something like protection or breasts, because it was, I am taking care of you. I'm nurturing you. I am not that. I'm beyond that. I am just being. But then he says, I'm going to come and get you out of this mess, right? It could be like, I am being. Why don't you find out who you are, and I'll come and visit you in 400 more years. He doesn't say that, right? He says, I'm going to come and get you out of this mess.
Well, he's showing who he is, because words could be meaningless. You could say all that, but then he shows.
He shows it. So he's showing in some ways an undynamic set of, you can look at it in many different ways. You could say the part of God, which is just being, is encouraging you to meditate on this. But then he's saying, I also have a dynamic aspect. I'm going to come and get you out of this Egypt. So to us, when we hear that, we could say, well, if you go to the ground of being, you can get out of all of your bondage. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying, I am going to come out and make miracles happen and get you out of this. I am a redeemer, right? So before God kind of helped Abraham, right? He gave him strength, he gave him spirit, he did things. But this is a whole new vision of God. This is the God who descends into our very world and shakes it up and says, I am going to shake up the world and not allow this small people. Because before then, what did God do? Gods were like, what did the other people believe gods did? God believed that the gods were these, kind of people up there who played with each other, and then you had to be careful and placate them. If not, they would strike you down, and they didn't really care about you. But this is a God who is, I'm going to shake this world and come help this little slave people. I mean, why did God take our side and not the side of the powerful, beautiful Egyptians? You know, he took our side. So this is an earthquake in what a God is, and what a God does, and a new moment, right? Of God, what God is going to do.
God is on the move here. God is going to create a miracle. And in fact, it's the miracles that God creates that really upsets the people who believe in the philosopher's God. Okay, the philosopher's God is very different. The philosopher, like for example, Spinoza had a tremendous problem with miracles and finally decided that there were no such things. But and lots of other philosophers, even Jewish philosophers, have done the same thing. But the fact that there's an action that seems to be contrary to nature sort of defines this thing in a different way than somebody who would just think that God is the ground of all being.
Okay, good.
May-
Okay, go ahead, and then Octavio put up his hand. So go ahead first, Phil, and then Octavio.
Oh, should I have used some kind of device to indicate? Because I didn't see it. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'll try. Yeah. I have a more primitive question, I mean, about the story, and I'm trying to, read it together as a story. Because when you asked before, why did the people not listen to Moses? It's as if we weren't referring to the earlier part of the story, which I guess wasn't read in it because of the triennial reading. It wasn't covered, maybe. I did
reference it, talked about it. The people heard him, and the elders heard him and worshiped God, but then they got more work. They got more.
Exactly.
bondage.
That's what they got for their. That's exactly my point. So when it says the people rejected him because people did not listen because of their bondage and their what was the word here?
Kutzer ruach.
Yeah,
Their-
right. The shortness of ruach. Okay, that might be just the way of saying. I mean, this is really what I'm asking. If that just means how, we believed you before, and look what it got us. It got us making bricks without straw, which is impossible. So in the time we have. So it seems to me that at least just in the story, that it's not really a mystery why they wouldn't believe him now. And so then he goes off to, and the first time he went off, he spoke to Pharaoh. Pharaoh had no interest in this. And there's always that puzzle to me of he comes back again and he does it again with Pharaoh. But the fact that the Israelites don't listen to him is not can't be dismissed. Yeah, it makes sense. That's exactly.
It makes your amount of sense. This is the God of they have stories probably of Abraham, of Isaac, of where they come from, of coming from Canaan and all of that. So, they believed the first time around, but it didn't work out and made their lives worse. So it makes sense that they don't want to listen to Moses. Okay, if your God is so great, let him take us out and then we'll believe this. One thing that I spoke about this at Minyan this morning, but one thing that always strikes me in this story is God is not upset about the people not believing him. God has his own plan of how this is all going to be revealed, right? And God follows it. God goes through these different things. Moses is the one who's freaking out because Moses is God. He's still figuring out the wheels of what it means to be a prophet. And so far, he's pretty unsuccessful. So Moses is having a trouble with how the events are going on. God is not surprised about this because, I think God probably expected the people not to listen to him the first time, and God knew that Pharaoh would not listen. He told Moses Pharaoh would not listen, but this is a hard thing to live through. And so it's all happening according to a plan. I think when it feels that powerfully, God is not upset. God does not say, all right, I'm going back home. I don't want to deliver this people. God is revealing herself more and more powerfully. Octavio, go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. I just had two comments. One was on the on the fact that you asked about the I am. And going from an existentialism theory, I would say that God is independent, all sufficient, and he's the only source of all existence in life. So that I am, I feel, describes that essence and identity of who God is, right? His name is more like being, all infinity and beyond, right? And the second thing that I wanted to share was why the Hebrews didn't believe Moses. I would say that one of the facts is, if we go back to Genesis, we can see that God actually told Abraham that his descendants will be enslaved for 400 years. So I'm wondering, and this is a question I have in my mind, I'm wondering if Abraham gave that message to Isaac and Jacob about the descendants. And I wonder if the Hebrews are feeling abandoned by God, and they're angry, and they're upset, and even Pharaoh at one point might say, well, your God abandoned your people, right? So that's why I'm not going to let them go, because I'm going to win, and regardless, right? So he doesn't really know God, right? So you mentioned right now that it was God's plan, right? So I believe that it was God's plan to do all this because he needs to show his grandiosity. He needs to show who God is in order for the nations that surrounded Egypt to know, and including Egypt, to know who the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is, right? So he needs to show all these things, the 10 plagues and all, rescuing the people from Egypt, bringing them to the promised land, all of that. It was all part of the plan. That's what I think.
Beautiful. Yeah. And God says this to Moses, the burning bush. He says, they're not going to let you go out, but I'll make my wonders known to them so that they will, eventually they will let you go. And so but it's very interesting to think of that God also has a big task ahead of him, which is to reestablish himself as the God of this people, because they're, where's their faith? They're down in Egypt. They're far from the land. They haven't felt much grace from their God in a while. What did they do? Was there any sense of worship of their God? We don't know. The Midrash says, they conserved dress, they conserved language, they conserved some things, but how much was lost, and what was really there anyway in the first place? This was the God of a clan. What were their lives like? Pretty hard, probably. They were just surviving. And Moses is aware of this. I want to go back to page 340 if you have a chumash from here, the one we use here, but chapter 5 of Exodus, verse 22, which is after what Phil was talking about happened, which was, Moses came and told the elders, God appeared, and they were like, Baruch Hashem, right? They're like, great, God, take us out. They're happy. And he goes to see Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, no, now no straw is issued to your servants, yet they demand of us so actually we're going to go even back to verse 15 of chapter 5. Someone go back to verse 15 of chapter 5 and start reading for us.
Then the overseers of the Israelites came to Pharaoh and cried, why do you deal thus with your servants? No straw is issued to your servants, yet they demand of us, make bricks. Thus your servants are being beaten when the fault is with your own people. Shagwan.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
He replied, you are shirkers. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to Adonai. Now be off to your work. No straw shall be issued to you, but you must produce your quota of bricks. Now the overseers of the Israelites found themselves in trouble because of the order, you must not reduce your daily quantity of bricks. As they left Pharaoh's presence, they came upon Moses and Aaron standing in their path. And they said to them, may Adonai look upon you and punish you for making us loathsome to Pharaoh and his courtiers, putting a sword in their hands to slay us. Then Moses returned to Adonai and said, "Oh, my Lord, why do you bring harm upon this people? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt worse with this people, and still you have not delivered your people." Then, I go on.
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Then Adonai said to Moses, "You shall soon see what I will do to Pharaoh. He shall let them go because of a greater might. Indeed, because of a greater might, he shall drive them from his land."
So that would explain why the people didn't trust Moses.
They're done with it. They're already
Yeah.
this, you know,
Yeah.
it's like you brought false hope,
Yeah.
right? False hope is even
Yeah.
worse.
Right.
You know, even worse, you know, when you're under oppression and you have false hope and then your false hope is dashed, you're even more, you're at the bottom of the barrel, you know, how you feel. But what is, and Moses, he's like, I didn't want to do this in the first place, God, and now look, you've turned me into a false prophet. And I don't know,
No one likes me.
no one likes me, you know, I would have been better. I'm 80 years old and Aaron is 83 years old and I left my family to come here and do this and look what's happening to me. Like, but God, what does God say? Be reassured. And then he says, so what is this? I was not known to them by the name of Adonai. What is this? What is God? What is this whole speech about of God's? I was not known to them by Adonai, but I was only known as El Shaddai. But I've heard them moaning. What's God's main message? So he is, as Octavio, as Phil were saying, you know, I'm the sustainer, but he's also the redeemer, right? And what else is he saying? What's the import of God's speaking to everybody?
It's a reintroduction,
Okay.
maybe.
A reintroduction, and then I'm not just a God who's going to come and, if God just came and immediately picked them up and dropped them in the promised land and said, now be there, maybe they wouldn't really know God at that point, right? God is taking them through a process, maybe. It takes a while to know somebody, you know, it takes a while to fall in love with somebody. It takes a while to.
But not only that, then it would be just easy, and they would think that anytime they wanted or needed anything,
really
they
true
would
too.
say, I don't know, give me an abundance in my fields, you know,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
would just do it.
Yeah,
They would never
beautiful.
have to do anything.
Right? There's a it wouldn't feel very real if it happened that way.
Well, God is smarter.
God is smarter than that, right? God is smarter than that.
Yeah, but the people are in a compromised position here, and the people at this point, I'm not sure personally if the people at this point understand who El Shaddai or who Adonai is. I don't know if they are worthy or could even, I don't know if they could accept getting the Torah on Sinai in their current state. I mean, they have to go through a process of trial and difficulty in order to bond themselves to this divinity. And I think this is the beginning of the process of the transformation of the people at their lowest point, right? These are the descendants of Abraham. The Lord has made this promise to this particular people, and then allowed these people to sink into slavery in this way, right? And so there's a lot that has to go on before they can become God's people, right? They have to be freed. They have to be refined. Their souls have to be refined to the point where they can accept Adonai, they can accept the Torah, they can accept the Jewish way of life. They're not Jews yet. they're not Jews yet. They're descendants of Abraham, but they're not God's people yet. They have to go through a crucible. They have to be tested. They have to be refined. They have to be remolded.
Well,
And
to understand that there is such a thing as this Adonai is not an easy task, because the Adonai does not come to you as a material object. He doesn't come to you as something that's within your sensations. The first contact is he comes to you as a what? As what? As I am that I am. I am the ground of being. Who understands that at first crack? Okay, these are things that are not understandable at first crack. You have to rack your brain and your thoughts to even feel something about that. And then what happens, though, is he moves into action. Okay, people understand action. They don't understand somebody who identifies themselves as something that you cannot see, but they do understand something that's powerful and that has action. So there has to be a set of actions that are going to convince people of anything at all. And the set of actions have to be something that isn't just purely magical. Okay, because a magician can do actions, whatever a magician is. This has to be actions and associated with this quality of I am that I am. So this is a tough thing.
very,
Very nice. And I think that the part that's actually kind of amazing too is that he's saying, I'm going to reveal to all of you, i.e., not just Moses and Aaron, but to I am revealing to all of you what I did not reveal to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? We kind of skip over that part, but you are right now, maybe you've already been through enough of a crucible to get something that even Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not get. That's a kind of a wonderful promise, even though you're not understanding this yet, but he's saying, maybe because of everything you've even been through to get to this point, you will understand and come to know part of who I am, even Abraham didn't get, even Abraham was not able to get. That's a beautiful promise, right? That's something very powerful that's being given to them. And it's also confusing to the commentators for many reasons, what Abraham didn't know. And also the name Adonai does appear throughout Genesis. So what does it mean? I did not appear to them as Adonai. That's in there. So let's actually go a little, unless I think Nancy, you had something you wanted to say, but then let's go a little bit into the commentators and start looking at that. Nancy, did you want to say something? Or
yeah, what I wanted to say is that these people, first of all, the divinity that is being presented here is very unlike any other divinity at this time, right? All the other divinities they're objects, or they're pagan gods, right? Where you've got an icon or an altar, and you go and you sacrifice to that altar, to that divinity, and then the divinity, in return for your sacrifice, does something for you, right? It's this sort of contractual divinity, right? We do this for you and you do this for us. But this divinity of the Hebrew people is a very different kind of divinity. You can't see it. It's one divinity, right? It's one divinity that has all this power. It's a very, very different kind of divinity than has been seen in this part of the world previously. Okay, so I can understand why these people are having difficulty wrapping their heads around a monotheistic divinity that you can't see, whose name is unclear, and who is saying things that are not realized within human time, right? I mean, what the divinity is saying they're going to do for the people of Israel, it's not instantaneous, right? I mean, it happens, but it doesn't happen on our timeline. And I think that the people are having I think any people would have difficulty wrapping their heads around this, but this is the first time we've seen this kind of divinity in this part of the world. And it's novel and it's new, and it's going to require an extra type of commitment to this divinity.
And God is aware that it's going to take a while for them to get it. Let's it seems to be, because he's understanding, he's not surprised. So let's look at the commentaries a little bit, and then we'll pull it all together. Can someone bring it up, or someone want to read Rashi on this verse?
Okay.
I can read it. But
Okay.
by my name, the Lord was I not known to them. It is not written here, my name, the Lord. I did not make known to them. But by my name, the Lord, was I not known unto them. I was not recognized by them in my attribute of keeping faith, by reason of which my name is called
I don't know.
Adonai, which denotes that I am certain to substantiate my promise. For indeed, I made promises to them, but did not fulfill them during their lifetime.
Hmm.
It's a little confusing.
A little confusing. I mean, right, he's speaking a little technically, but he what does it mean? I was not known to them, or I was. So it's not saying that they did not know this name, right? Because, as I said in the book of Genesis, he says the same name. So what does it mean I was not known? He did say my name is this, but it was saying they didn't understand this name. They didn't it's like I can say my name is whatever, Joe, but people, you might think you understand what Joe means, but maybe at a certain point, like, oh, now I understand what that means. Now I understand who you are, right? There's sometimes you can know somebody for 30 years and then they do something, you're like, now I understand you deeper than I ever understood you before. So he's saying, they knew me by this name. It's not they didn't know this name, but this is one of my names, but they did not understand this name. And now they're gonna see something about me that will make them understand me at a level that they could never understand. And for Rashi, what that is that I keep my promises, even though it could take hundreds of years. I keep my promises. And once you've seen, it's true, once you've seen the God who's done this, you think very differently of this God than the God who speaks to your grandfather every now and then, right? Once you've seen God do these plagues, wow, this is a different understanding of who this God is.
Don't you think also that they had been so beaten down, they didn't have time to think about somebody like a divinity?
They probably had zero thought of, and I think what that brings to me too is that, I talk about this often in many different ways, but the Jewish people just spent 2,000 years with a lot of oppression. So during those 2,000 years, how much did we really think about God? I'm not sure we thought about God all that much, because we were too busy surviving in our shtetls. We were too busy enduring all kinds of things. We were too busy just thinking about, how can I make ends meet and not have the Tsar come down and put me in jail or worse. So we're kind of, in some ways, we've endured over the last 2,000 years an extended, really horrible period. And so I often think about, what does it mean now that, even though there is anti-Semitism coming back and Israel's a mess, what does it mean that maybe we can start to talk about it in a different way? What does it mean to have a God?
And when you think about some Holocaust survivors that I knew very well, they didn't believe in God anymore. They turned away from God.
Yeah. Well, the Holocaust for many people made them not believe in God. There were those who walked into the gas chambers saying the Shema, and for whom, it had the, different effect. I will or ani mamin, right? I still believe in the coming of the Messiah, even though he tarries. For a lot of people had the opposite, but this is a similar kind of situation, right? This is, right? It's who's going to believe in God? And, if you believe in God, what can you do? But this is the God of keeping faith, right? This is a vision of God. When this God manifests, it changes your understanding of what God is. Let's read a little bit further. Ramban, Nachmanides. Anybody want to read?
I can read it. I can read it, but I can't see myself on the screen when I do it. I'm going to pull it up and look at it. Okay, so you tell me when to stop. The purport of the verse is that he appeared to the patriarchs by this name, that is El Shaddai, which indicates that he is the victor and prevailer over the hosts of heaven, doing great miracles for them, except that no change from the natural order of the world was noticeable, as was the case with the miracles performed through Moses, our teacher. In famine, he redeemed them from death, and in war from the power of the sword, and he gave them riches and honor and all the goodness, just like all the assurances mentioned in the Torah, in the section dealing with the blessings and curses. Thus God said to Moses, I have appeared to the patriarchs with the might of my arm, with which I prevail over the constellations, and help those whom I have chosen. But with my name, Yod-Heh, with which all existence came into being, I was not made known to them, that is, to create new things for them by the open change of nature. And wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am the eternal, verse 6, and inform them once again of the great name, i.e. the tetragrammaton, the Yod-Heh. For by that name I will deal wondrously with them, Joel, and they will know that I am the eternal, Hashem, that maketh all things. By way of the truth, shall I go on?
Let's stop there, because that in itself is a powerful idea and
Okay.
law. But right, he's saying that the way he appeared to the patriarchs and matriarchs was, I'm in your life, but I'll make you have a better harvest. I'll give you more riches, or I'll help you in war prevail over your enemies. I will, I'm not going to shake the natural order, but I'll kind of help direct things to help you, and that's the way most people thought of God, right? Why did you pray to the gods? They'll make your harvest a little bit better. They'll do things. They'll do things. They'll work. As he was saying, I love this. Prevail over the constellations, right? What's the constellations? That's the fate. The world works in a certain way. The constellations work in a certain way. But what's your belief in God? God will come and help direct it a little bit in your favor. That's what they believed. But our vision of God is not only that. This is the God who will come and literally shift the fabric of the reality and come down, and the God that the philosophers have a lot of trouble with, right? The God who will actually change. And I was going to say this earlier, but Maimonides, he has trouble with it too. And he says, God didn't do this. He actually worked into the nature that at a certain moment, at a certain year, at a certain second, the sea would part, or the plague would come, because he couldn't accept that God would change nature. He thought that God worked it into the computer program of the world, that at some point it would happen. But Nachmanides does not believe that, and I think he's truer to the plain meaning of the tradition. Right? What does it mean? What is this name of God that we have? I am the eternal, I am the ground of all being. This is the one that to create new things for them by the open change of nature. To create new things for them by the open change of nature. It's an amazing thing. Anybody have any thoughts, or should we continue?
Is that a reference, the new things? Is that a reference to those prophetic texts about a new heaven and a new earth, or is there some other tradition that's being evoked?
I think I'm not 100% sure. This is just the plagues, because in Nachmanides' mind, Ramban, the plagues came out of nowhere, right? It wasn't that there was at that moment all these frogs or something going to appear. God made these frogs appear out of nothing and made them come. So that was a new thing, right? The plagues were new things that God brought in. It wasn't that God steered some frogs to go there. It wasn't that God, made blood go out of some cows to go into the Nile. God made the blood appear out of naught, right? So that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? than a whole other kettle of frogs than than it. So it's a big claim, right? So let's go to the last paragraph of Ramban, by way of the truth. Do you have it, Phil? By way of the truth. Octavio, I saw you unmute for a second. Did you want to say something?
Oh, yes, I was just going to say something that I wanted to point out, Rabbi, that I think it's important is that the Hebrews lived in a nation that was surrounded by temples and deities and a lot of idolatry. And a lot of these deities and temples and whatnot had names as well. So I feel that God had to give a name also to differentiate himself from them. And I think that's an important factor that we should consider, also why God wanted to make himself be able to be different. I know that I believe it, correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi, Ahaya Asher Ahaya translates in I will be what I will be, or something like that. And I feel that that was important for him to say, to differentiate that aspect of these deities and idolatry to God, all powerful, all magnificent, right? So I think that was important to point out.
Very, very nice. And I think up until then, God had said to Abraham, I am El Elyon, I am the uppermost God, the highest God. And now, okay, that sounds really good. I'm the uppermost God. All these other people believe in God, but I'm the best God. So I'm better than all the other gods. This is kind of a Ramban the same too. But this is in his very name. There's this, it's like a revolutionary idea of God. It's like being, I will be what I will be. It's like, what? Your name, your God's name isn't this or that. It's a whole other concept of God. It's dynamic, it's both intimately personal and kind of infinite and eternal. It's like, it's very different. Like back then it was like, okay, I've got a God for the harvest, I've got the God for the thunder, I've got the God for the, it's a very different idea of God, being, or the ground of being. This is a completely different level of understanding of what God can be, of what the deity can be. And it would be confusing for the people, but it's also completely different understanding and revelation of God to a people. And I mean, one of the interesting aspects is, why did God choose his people to reveal this name to them, to us? And maybe it's because they were the lowest of the low, and they were empty, and they were understood suffering in a way that few people could, because they'd experienced it so much themselves. And they kept their faith on some level, perhaps, through all those years. But it is a mystery. Why did God choose this little people to take humanity for? I mean, it sounds a little presumptuous that we Jews believe this, but we do believe that God, revealed a whole new level of, maybe, this is me speaking from the 21st century. Maybe we're really talking about the Near East, because in other places in the world, there were different conceptions of God. We're not that different from this already. But in the Near East, this was revolutionary. Other people were sacrificing their kids to gods and fires and doing horrible things. And we were saying God is being. This is amazing, an amazing conception of God.
Maybe he saw something in these people.
Yeah.
It's almost like God is the conception of conception. I mean, that's one of so the self-reference aspect of this keeps coming up in my mind, because self-reference turns out to be something that when you think about, it takes you out of any system that you're in. So let's say God, I am that I am is I am a conception of conception. Think about that. I am a conception of conception. And that's one of the ways to think about that and to twist that up in your head, where actually you get a little trip out of it. You get to sort of transcend yourself at the moment that you're thinking that.
You get to the absence of conception, which is
Right.
where you
Right.
Before we get real, I know the time running out, before we get either real Buddhist or real metaphysical about the Torah, I think we have to at least wonder whether that's the way the Torah meant it. Anyhow, that's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I think bringing both Phil and David and all of this together, the last of Nachmanides, which is a Kabbalistic view, by way of the truth, the mystic teachings of the Kabbalah, the verse can be explained in consonance with its plain meaning and intent. He is saying, I, the Eternal, appeared to the patriarchs through the speculum of El Shaddai, but myself, I, the Eternal, did not make myself known to them, as they did not contemplate me through a lucid speculum, so they should know me. Just as in the sense of the verse, and there hath not arisen a prophet since in Israel like unto Moses, whom the Eternal knew face to face. The patriarchs did know the proper name of the Eternal, but it was not known to them through prophecy. Therefore, when Abraham spoke with God, he mentioned the proper name together with the name. The purport, therefore, is that the revelation of the divine presence and its communication with them came to them through an ameliorated attribute of justice. And with that attribute, what is conduct towards them. But with Moses, his conduct and his recognition to him were by the attribute of mercy, which is indicated by his great name. So what I want to bring it all together then is that whether it's through Moses or directly to the people, something new was happening here, whereas God was revealing to them a way of divinity, which is the ground of being, but also mercy, also a God who comes and hears cries of those who are crying out, and comes to help them in different ways. This is still a moment that resonates for us because we say, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Echad. We refer to this God. When we refer to this God, we're saying this is a God that we can know through our own meditation and prayer and contemplation. It's the God that is our God, our very self. If you want to go in that direction. But it's also the God, as we repeat at the end of the Shema, who took us out of Egypt. And we believe in both those aspects of God. The God is the God, as difficult as it is for many moderns. God is the God who is the source of all being, the ground of all being, and there is a revolution, but also the God who comes down and helps those who are crying out. And that is also a revolution. And we partner with that God to make the world a better place. And we always believe that God, in partnership with us, will help those who are crying out. And so we believe in both those aspects of God, and that is at the core of the Egypt story. It's a core of Moses' revelation, and it's still at the core of who we are as Jews thousands of years later. Thank you for joining us. We will meet again next week, God willing.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Rabbi. It was an amazing teaching. Thank you.
Everyone.